Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's absolutely fantastic to see you all here today. My name's John Galloway and part of the BCG group. And this afternoon I'll be talking about a subject called mediatisation. Has the Queen accepted? One of the things which I quite admire Brian for is everything he sort of gleans in terms of information, he always tries to back up with pure documentary evidence. And this is one of these cases where a chap called David Bourne has been writing to the Queen to try and establish her exact position. So I'm not actually going to come up and make an opinion or whether she has or not, but however, you'll be able to see what the correspondence says. So, what is mediatisation? We've got two definitions here, and the first is to annex a lesser state to a greater state as a means of permitting the ruler of the lesser state to retain title and partial authority. Or mediatisation, to annex one state to another, allowing the former ruler to retain his title. So basically, if someone who is a head of a state has accepted mediatisation, they have given up all their authority. However, they are retaining the trappings of office and lifestyle without real authority. Out of interest, the latest Oxford Dictionary doesn't actually include a definition. We all know about World War I and World War II, and especially the Second World War was fought to maintain our sovereignty. So we as the people have the right to govern our own country. This is quite crucial to why we were such a successful and fair country. Now, King George VI died on the 6th of February 1952. And the way our constitutional monarchy works is that there's always a head of state, a sovereign, and that sovereignty passes immediately to the next person in line. So when King George VI died, the Queen Elizabeth was the rightful heir, and immediately sovereignty was transferred to her. And in fact, the person who informed her of the death of his father addressed her as Your Majesty, and this recognised a transfer of sovereignty from the now deceased George to the Queen. She wasn't forced to accept the sovereignty, and indeed, she could have rejected it if she so wished. On Wednesday, the 6th of February in 1952, the list of witnesses was published for the Queen's Declaration of Sovereignty, which is to be held on Friday, the 8th of February. And as we can see here, the list was actually published in the London Gazette. On the 8th of February, the Queen called together her Privy Council, and the Council therefore became all the prior listed witnesses, as we saw in the paper there, and she made her declaration of sovereignty to the people there and to the nation. No one there desisted from the proceedings for the declaration of sovereignty, so therefore, as a fact, we can state quite clearly that on the 8th of February 1952, the Queen was sovereign. So, if mediatisation has taken place, it would have happened between February 1952 to some time in the present. What I'm now going to do is go through some of the correspondence from David Bourne, who's been corresponding with the palace and other people, to try and find out the exact position of the Queen in terms of the role she fulfills within our country. On the 28th of October, David Bourne wrote to the Queen, and he basically had three main points, which are the following. Am I right in concluding that, as your father has been the embodiment of the sovereignty of the British people up to the moment of his death, that you assumed that embodiment at that moment? That in fact that you had been the physical embodiment of the sovereignty of the British people throughout your reign, and that embodiment allows you the style and title of our sovereign Majesty Queen Elizabeth II of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and that you will be the embodiment of the British people until the moment of your own natural death, when it passes to the next rightful heir to the throne. Also, am I right in believing that the laws of treason are there specifically to protect you and your heirs and successors? So that's pretty straightforward questions that were asked. Again, on the 22nd of January 2005, he wrote again because he hadn't had a response, and he also enclosed a copy of the original letter. On the 21st of February 06, Buckingham Palace replied, and the letter read as follows. The Queen has asked the Private Secretary to thank Mr. Bourne for his letter and to say that it's been passed to the Department of Constitutional Affairs so that his approach to Her Majesty may be known and consideration given to the points raised in the letter. Of note is that the letter was actually addressed to anyone and also not signed by anyone. Important points. On the 21st of March 2006, the Clerk of the Privy Council, and A.K. Galloway, no relation to me, wrote to David Bourne, and he wrote as follows. As we have already explained, we can only answer questions of fact, and we cannot give an opinion on the interpretation of legal or constitutional matters. We simply have no locus to do so, and any opinion expressed by this office or indeed any other government department or minister would have no authority whatever. Interpretation of the law is a matter for the courts. And then he goes on to say, I'm sorry to have given you a reply that I know will disappoint you, as I've already informed you, further correspondence on this matter will only be acknowledged. Now, isn't that extraordinary? Just a fairly simple, straightforward question and complete evasion. So on the 23rd of March 06, David again wrote to the Clerk of the Privy Council explaining that he had not asked for interpretation of any law, which he hadn't, as you've seen, or constitutional matters, but that he regarded confirmation of three facts, which I'll just recap, was a transfer of sovereignty of the British people to Her Majesty on the death of George VI. Did the Privy Council agree that as a fact there had been a transfer of sovereignty at the declaration, and are the laws of treason there to protect the sovereign? So, surprise, surprise, the response back to David for that, I acknowledge receipt of your letter dated 23rd of March 06, yours sincerely, Philip Swan. Some of us would call it stonewalling. So, in conclusion, really, Buckingham Palace, Privy Council officers and Department of Constitutional Affairs are unwilling to confirm the very basis of our sovereignty, which is very strange. So that's all I wanted to present to you. So again, I'd like to thank David Bourne for actually getting the correspondence, but this is actually evidence where something that is quite crucial to our country, how our sovereignty is held and how we are represented, to not be able to answer those three simple questions, I think, is great cause for concern.
That's probably because it doesn't exist anymore. That's why they don't want to answer it.
Exactly.
You could well be right.
Can I add to that? We've had another letter that's been come to us, and it says...
Do you want to use the microphone?
Sorry.
There you go.
Yeah, as an addendum to this information, it's quite obvious what's happened. We can draw our conclusions from it. Is we had a letter from the Constitutional Ministry of Constitutional, or Department of Constitutional Affairs, saying the authority of Her Majesty has evolved. It's evolved. Okay. Evolved. It's moved on. So what they're saying is that they are actually admitting, in their own little way, is that Her Majesty the Queen is no longer sovereign, and we must conclude that she has accepted mediatisation. And my position on this, and it's something that I think we need to discuss, is that we must make the statement that we are assuming that Her Majesty the Queen has accepted mediatisation and she's no longer the sovereign of this kingdom.
So that's treason.
It is treason. It is exactly the point.
So do we chop the heads off or what?
Well, the point is, if if we are making a statement that the Queen has committed treason against the people, does she stay silent? I mean, there's got to be some outcome from that. So these things are happening all the time.
So we're a republic.
Well, you are right. We have been converted into a republic, and that's why I invited people to read that essay by Jack Straw, his interpretation about our constitution. The word monarch or people's sovereignty is not mentioned at all, right? So the point they're making is they have moved us on without our knowledge. That is treason. There's no question about it.
So could this first have happened back in 72?
So to be just that gentleman there first, yeah.
Shouldn't we find the weakest point in the enemy's armour,
Yeah.
and then we get a nail and bang on at that point?
The weakest point is
It's dispersing energy across a broad spectrum. Concentrate on this will be crucial.
But as you've seen, this is the point, listen, they are in control, right? They will stonewall. The only time that we will have is that when we do not have to ask them any questions, right? Is that when we make statements, we make our own assertions. At that point in time, we put them out to graves, okay? So that gentleman there.
Could this actually have happened, this transfer started back in 72?
Probably before that. And I mean, we don't know the answers to the questions. It's an assumption. And again, covering the key areas before, is that we do know that the Queen will not answer key questions when we write to her. They are transferred to a minister, to Jack Straw, and they write back on her behalf.
So Parliament has put itself above the Queen?
Exactly. So there has been a takeover, that there's been a removal of sovereignty from Her Majesty the Queen, and hence a removal of our sovereignty, and that is treason. Okay. So the tactic is, I mean, we can't take them to court. We have got to force them to take us to court. So we have got to come out with statements. Our assumption is Her Majesty the Queen has accepted mediatisation and has therefore committed treason against the people.
What about the block?
Which?
The block.
The block.
The heads off the lot.
Yeah, I agree with that.
There's another point, and then it's another point, okay, that we are so much up to speed on this, okay, we are light years ahead of the other 90% of the population. And if we come out and start having a fight with the Queen, we're going to upset people, right? We don't want to upset people, we want people to come on board and educate themselves. So there's certain things that we're not going to do. We're going to be quite strategic about what we say and what we don't say. So you'll notice that we are honing in our constitution and the rule of law. That's something we can sell to people. They understand, they will agree with, and they will support us. And then we'll explain this type of thing to them, and they can actually take on board what they want to take on board as far as, well, the Queen's a traitor then, isn't she? So there's diplomacy and there's strategy attached to what we're trying to achieve.
I just wanted to say that I've been trying to tell people for like 10 years, and speaking about council workers, one gentleman who was with Lloyd, he put 20,000 in, and they zoomed in on him, and he's lost like 7,000. He didn't even know that he wasn't getting guaranteed interest. What I'm saying now is, there's a law that man should love his neighbours himself, help each other, and I've tried to tell them that. Now they're realising it's affecting them.
Yes.
And I think you get that message, if you're not being affected, then you don't have to listen to this, but everybody's being affected.
Well, you're talking about a bank that's ripped somebody off, okay? Nothing new there then. We know that there are 1 million people who've been made bankrupt in the United Kingdom. I'm talking to a gentleman in London who, through his research, has declared that he is absolutely certain that 95% of those are null and void and unlawful, right? So we want to tap into those. We know that people have had their homes taken from them, right, unlawfully. We want to tap into those. So we see this organisation growing from the level it's at now to a massive organisation in due course. And all we're asking you guys to do is to start talking about all these issues and spreading the word.